Hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. So, I have a very difficult relationship with James Wan, because he represents an era of horror storytelling that I don't necessarily engage with. I was a huge fan of Insidious for the first half of the film. I genuinely loved the style of scares, the atmosphere he built. You get that sense of personal tragedy and trauma having a almost psychological effect on a group of characters, and that worked so well for the first half of the film until it got goofy and they brought in almost comedic ghostbustery type characters, and they brought in the medium who basically exposits the nature of the plot, and I couldn't stand it, and it lost me almost completely within the second half. And unfortunately, it's just in an era of horror that just I really struggled with, because this is post Paranormal Activity, where people loved sort of people. It was a return to hauntings in the home type of storytelling. But whereas the original Paranormal Activity, and almost exclusively the original Paranormal Activity, I will go so far even to say the festival cut, really tapped into the representation of sort of a couple's, the unspoken microaggressions and tension of a couple manifested through this sort of haunting, and how, the camera was almost intrusive into their home. And that was truly original, and I genuinely think the first Paranormal Activity doesn't get its credit because it's lumbered as part of this bigger franchise thing. And I think that films like Insidious, Sinister, The Conjuring all came from the sort of reinvigoration through that. But whereas, like I said, Insidious, I think, has a great premise, but just utterly loses it for me. Sinister, I think, is a good film, like a really good film, with some funny, weird bits that you sort of have to sort of look over. And The Conjuring just isn't for me. It's just not the kind of horror I'm into, because it's far too explanatory. It's more interested in sort of the ghost busting than it is in the actual sort of nature of horror, because it's about trying to explain it. And of course, as I've said, horror is about the inexplicable and sort of the manifestation of more complex ideas that we can't fully articulate or understand. And so, and James Wan, despite the credit he deserves for being one of sort of revitalizing the horror genre and being a genuinely great director, I had that hostility towards his style, because it's just a bit too mainstream horror, I suppose. And now they've released Malignant. And Malignant is a curious film, to say the least. Because, okay, so the premise, because I suppose this is a new release out in cinemas now, and it's worth just touching the basics. But it opens with a child in some kind of hospital setting, and I'm going to be very careful not to spoil too much here, because this film needs to be honestly seen to be believed. But there's clearly something potentially psychic or something extra normal or supernatural about this child, and they are a threat. But the doctors are trying their best to treat this child to the point where they actually wanted to sort of commit surgery on the child to try and fix this incredible problem. So then it cuts to a couple, and then the relationship between this opening scene and this couple are it's very hard to sort of track exactly how these things will pay off. But you basically follow this couple, and it's a girl who's pregnant and her husband. But as it very quickly transpired, the husband is abusive, and the wife has basically had a series of miscarriages, and this is sort of her fourth attempt at getting pregnant and staying pregnant. And then supernatural things start to happen to this couple. And now I'm going to go from being fairly explicit in sort of the context of just. I'm not going to explain hardly anything at all from this point on. Because this film, as I say, it definitely starts from the same spirit as the sort of home invasion, sort of paranormal style of that era of franchises like The Conjuring and like Insidious. But the direction it goes, it's almost like three separate. It's almost like the prologue is one film, and then you have three separate acts, and each act almost feels like a different film, just with the same characters. It's remarkable how quickly this film escalates into just the bizarre. Because I will say that the first half of the film is maybe the first half hour is fairly conventional. You think, okay, I'm starting to get a grip on what is going on. There is a slasher style story going on where people are being murdered almost seemingly at random by a seemingly typical slasher type character. Now, unfortunately, I'm very fussy when it comes to slasher films. If it's not Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the original Halloween, there aren't many standard slasher films that I find particularly. As I talked about quite extensively with the Fear Street trilogy, just giving me a slasher film doesn't interest me because there's the kind of depth that's required just isn't there. And so watching this first half, I'm like, okay, yes, there's a slasher. Yeah, there's some gnarly bits where the nature of sort of the murders take place, and of course, sort of, it has that Seven-esque style of how things are presented, how the victims are presented once they're discovered by the police. And that's something else that's sort of introduced into the film that I never find that interesting, which is there is a police component to it. And I'm very wary of that because it veers into the trying to get an understanding and explanation on horror. And the whole point is that it should be in a world of isolation, of almost confusion, where not every plot should be, oh, the police don't believe the person, but then if the police become main characters in the story, I start to sort of suspect that the film will become more conventionally a mystery, where there is a B, and C in terms of answering what is going on. And there is in this film to a degree, because as I say, the horror just didn't interest me, but the mystery was a little intriguing, and I thought early on, I thought I had a handle on what was going on, and as like I say, you get through the first half, I thought I knew what film I was watching, and then it takes a rather remarkable turn that I genuinely. It didn't disprove what I thought was going on in the film. The mystery still played. The mystery still played out in a way that I went, okay, that is parallel to my sort of thinking in terms of what I thought was happening. But man, this film is just the last 30 minutes is just wild in the direction it goes, and the sort of it escalates very quickly into something that's frankly practically a supervillain origin film, because what the answers to what this film is going on are honestly extraordinary, and what the confrontations that happen in this film are just honest. There's a scene in a prison cell that is it's like something out of like a good Predator film, basically. It's remarkable the direction this film takes, to the point where, Halloween, the original John Carpenter Halloween, is a great slasher film, and it doesn't just give you the shape; it does create atmosphere and knows how to present the horror in the right way. But if there is a character who sort of made me think of The Shape, this character is the one, even though there are also supernatural components to it, or sort of pseudo supernatural components, and honestly, what this ends up being is so worth not spoiling. I already feel like I've said too much, and I'm reticent to say any more. But yeah, this film is wild. Honestly, it's like I say, it's not, to me. It's not horror in terms of I don't think there's any point in which I was afraid or I didn't even jumped. But there is the mystery component, and that's interesting, and it definitely kept me going for a while. And then there is this additional layer to it, which I just think is something. Like I say, it boggles belief. In all honesty, and the film it's not, it's not like it's a wholly original idea. You definitely get sort of things that harken back to films like The Unborn or Basket Case. So you do get that sense of, oh, okay, I see the tradition that this is going for and where this is coming from. But man, this is presented in a way that I'm fairly confident I've not seen before. I thought, as I was watching, I thought, I swear I've seen some version of this. But as the escalation happened, I went, I'm fairly confident I've never seen anything like this before. So that by the time you get to the end, I honestly, I'm like, well, I definitely am surprised, if nothing else. Yeah, this is definitely worth seeing. It's definitely just for the shock factor of it and the inexplicable turns it takes. And again, if nothing else, that's fun. And again, it is a good, half decent slasher mystery thriller. And then this other thing. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because it's all helping the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 250 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.